Hello. Thank you for your patience. We had a little bit of a technical difficulty getting started. We're obviously a little rusty at this, not having seen you in a while. Welcome to Wright Virtual Visits. I'm Anna Kaplan, Executive Director of Frank Lloyd Wright's Graycliff, coming to you live from Western New York, and I'll be your host today as we visit a very special exhibition installed for the occasion of the 100th anniversary of the opening of Wright's Imperial Hotel in Tokyo. It's installed at the Barden House, part of the Marden House complex, right in my backyard in Buffalo, New York. I'm personally very excited to share this exhibition with you, one that I've had the opportunity to spend some time with in person. This being the first episode in quite some time, we also have an announcement about what the rest of our 2024 season will look like. So let me start by thanking my colleague as we are continuing our work together in 2020 in the 2024 edition of this program, Eric Rogers of the Frank Lloyd Wright Building Conservancy. Though we don't see Eric here on screen at the moment, know that he is hard at work behind the scenes to ensure that everything runs smoothly. He's also monitoring Facebook and will be attentive to any questions that you may have. So please add questions, comments directly on the Facebook thread, and we will be sure to catch those during the tour and then incorporate them into the Q&A portion of today's program. I'd also like to express huge gratitude to Forever Ready Productions for their continued in-kind support of our program. Today we have Scott behind the scenes facilitating our show. We are able to continue this program because of Forever Ready's commitment. Let's pause now for a short new video they have created about their production firm. I love that. Thanks again to Scott, Allison, and the whole Forever Ready team. So we've definitely been to the Marden House as part of our program before, but today we are focusing on a temporary exhibition that, if you can suspend your disbelief, will take us all the way to 1920s Japan. We have the brilliant curator of the Marden House, Susanna Tejada, here with us today. Scott, can you bring Susanna up? And we also have Kelly Mazer, the communications manager at the Marden House, behind the camera. Hi, Susanna. Thank you so much for being here today. This feels like a 2-for-1 episode because we're going to learn about Wright's Imperial Hotel, but you're at the door of the Barden House, a very impressive space, which we also have yet to feature on our program. So let me pass it over to you, Susanna, and I'll let you take it from here.
Wonderful. Thank you, Anna, and hello, everyone. I'm Susanna Tejada, Marden House curator, and on behalf of our museum, I'm really delighted to welcome all of you to the Barden House, and of course, to have this wonderful opportunity to share with you some of the highlights from our current exhibition called Thought Built, the Imperial Hotel at 100. As was just mentioned, I'm also joined today by Kelly Mazer, and I just wanted to give her a big shout out for helping to assist from behind the scenes. Thought Built is an exhibition that was organized by us at Frank Lloyd Wright's Martin House, but it's been realized in association with our strategic partners at the State University of New York at Buffalo. So before we begin, I'd like to extend my gratitude to the University Archives, as well as to all the lenders who have generously contributed to the success of this exhibition. And I'd also like to briefly acknowledge our generous supporters, M&T Bank and the Wilmington Trust, who also helped to make this exhibition happen. So without further delay, let's enter through the front door of the Barton House and make our way to the front entry, where we'll learn a little bit more about our exhibition. Follow me. So welcome to the Barton House. I'm standing at the front entry hall, which is at the intersection of the first floor living room and dining room spaces. Barton House is one of 3 standalone residences that was designed by Frank Lloyd Wright for Darwin Martin and his family, which form part of our entire historic property. Barton House was completed in 1903 and is a fine example of Wright's vision for what a prairie-style house could be for a middle-class family. But for the purposes of this exhibition, Barton House takes on much deeper meaning because the house itself becomes the major player in the exhibition. I like to think of it as the show-stopping object on display. And why is that? It's through the perspective of Barton House that we as viewers can examine and experience one of Wright's long lost works. It's a story within a story, seeing the Imperial Hotel through the Barton House, which came 20 years before. Frank Lloyd Wright's Imperial Hotel officially opened on September 1st, 1923. It was Wright's first international commission, and it was the second generation of the Imperial Hotel. One came before Wright's structure. The Imperial Hotel was conceived to be a place that would be as earthquake-proof and as fire-proof as possible. And that was achieved primarily by a contemporary method of construction using a floating foundation system. And all of this came to be actually very fortuitous because in the end, on the very day that the Imperial Hotel had its opening, Tokyo suffered a tremendous earthquake. Blocks upon blocks of the city of Tokyo were completely obliterated, as were neighboring regions and the city of Yokohama. After the earthquake, about 4 months later, Frank Lloyd Wright's mentor and architect, Louis Sullivan, wrote an article that he authored for the Architectural Record. And in it, he described how Wright's Imperial Hotel was an architectural monument for the entire world, and that it was able to withstand the forces of nature because, as Sullivan put it, it was, quote, thought built by Frank Lloyd Wright. And so we take inspiration from Sullivan's words for the title of this particular exhibition. So let's move forward and see a little bit more about how this building was thought built by looking at the Imperial Hotel. We'll now enter into the Barton House living room. So while the Imperial Hotel managed to survive the Great Kanto earthquake, its fate would come to a head some decades later when in the late 1960s, the hotel management of the Imperial Hotel made the very difficult decision that it needed to raise Wright's building because it was no longer serving their purposes. The decision was made to demolish it. Edgar Taffel, who was once an apprentice of Wright and an architecture in his own right, when he heard news about its impending fate, along with a group of others, they tried their best to save this landmark. But without much success, Taffel decided to travel to Japan to see and witness for himself the hotel's demolition and rescued fragments of the hotel, which he shipped back to the United States. These materials form part of the University Archives Taffel, or what I like to call the Buffalo Collection. What you see in this display case are some examples of the type of materials in this core collection. There are terracotta bricks and tiles, scratch tiles, as well as those very famous Oya stone blocks, of which there are 5, in fact, in the Buffalo Collection. I don't think it's an exaggeration to say that the Buffalo Collection is the most outstanding grouping of Imperial Hotel artifacts found in any collection in the United States. And that's not only because of its size. There are 35 items in the collection, of which there are many multiples, and most of which are in display in this room, but also because of its scope. But rather than speak about every individual object, I thought we'd just spend some time focusing in on some of the more unique and rare pieces. So we'll turn around and take a look at the mantle of the Barton House fireplace, where we see sitting atop it a copper fragment, which was one in a series of such type objects that wrapped around the roofline of the entire Imperial Hotel. The fragment is actually quite lightweight and very delicate. You'll see at the center of the object an organic form, which reminds me at least of butterfly wings. And then on the bottom edges, you'll see inverted squares that would have created a lovely pattern again along the cornice of the hotel. On either side of this particular copper piece, we find 2 examples of those Oya block stones that were so famous at the hotel. They have a wonderful carving, which takes inspiration from Mayan architecture and iconography. And while these 2 objects are actually quite different in terms of their style and their weightiness, they both take into consideration Wright's interest in what he dubbed the nature of materials. What he's trying to do here is use materials in a way that he can highlight their intrinsic beauty. So showing off copper for the beauty of copper, Oya stone for the beauty of stone, and glass for the beauty of glass. So speaking of glass, we'll now turn our attention directly across the other side of the living room and take a close-up look at a very rare and unique art glass window that came from the Imperial Hotel. It's defined, as you can see, by its very simple yet elegant rectilinear lines and geometric checkerboard pattern. Some of the squares are highlighted with gold leaf, allowing light to filter through and show off some movement and beauty. In fact, I'd like to talk a little bit more about that because the placement of this particular art glass window is is facing a series of windows that look out onto the front porch where we started our virtual visit. I think placement of the window is extremely important because we want to have that conversation between Barton House as well as the Imperial Hotel, allowing us to make connections to this place where we're currently at that still exists with a building that unfortunately no longer exists. One of the things that we're able to do here is make a nice comparison in terms of the kind of art glass that Frank Lloyd Wright was able to design throughout his career. On either side of the Imperial Hotel window are two beautiful examples of art glass patterns from the Barton House. These are first floor windows that have a design that is inspired by nature. So when you look at those windows, I think perhaps of branches of a tree, or you can interpret them in any way as you like. But you can see here how at the time when Martin House, the entire complex was being built, art glass was such a strong component to the design here, and it carried through until the time, until the 1920s, and in that period of time, that was kind of the ending years when Wright was exploring the use of glass and light as a medium. Another thing that I'd like to point out is how through the placement of this Imperial Hotel panel, we can look outside the window and see one example of 13 limestone urns, which are placed in different locations throughout the Martin House historic property. This one, again, is on the porch of the Barton House. And what you see here, you see a very similar checkerboard pattern that we just saw on the Imperial Hotel window, drawing our attention to Wright's interest in a common vocabulary that he implemented and used for different projects at different points in time during his practice. So maybe Kelly, just take a quick look around into some of the built-in cases. And while we take a look at some more of the tiles and blocks that come from the Imperial Hotel, these are exhibited within a built-in bookcase inside the Barton House living room. We'll make our way across the space to the Barton House dining room, where we'll learn a little bit more about the relationship between Frank Lloyd Wright and Darwin Martin. So Frank Lloyd Wright and Darwin Martin were acquaintances and this kind of relationship was started when Wright was first commissioned to work on the Martin House project, as well as the Larkin Administration Building. Their relationship was built on business, but in the end, after 30 years, they became lifelong friends. The University Archives at the State University of New York at Buffalo has a wonderful treasure trove of letters between these two individuals that span the period of their friendship. But beyond friendship, it's important to note that Darwin Martin was one of the biggest patrons and financial supporters of Frank Lloyd Wright. I would venture to say that it was Darwin Martin who was most influential in supporting Wright, particularly financially, so that he was able to become the architect that he was. I thought we'd spend a little bit of time taking a look at three particular letters that were written at the time that the Imperial Hotel was beginning to be built. They all date from 1913. Two of the letters are from Frank Lloyd Wright to Darwin Martin, and then there's a response from Martin back to his friend. If you'll allow me, I thought I would read a few excerpts from these letters so we can all get a better sense as to the relationship between these two individuals and how it was one based on loyalty and trust, but also this kind of underlying current of this business relationship and this financial backing and support from Martin. So the first letter dates from January 10th, 1913. And it starts by saying, "My dear Mr. Martin, I am sailing for Japan tomorrow in search of the commission of consulting architect for the new Imperial Hotel. The building is to cost $7 million, the finest hotel in the world. Of course, I may not get it, then again I may. It would mean 40 or $50,000 and a couple of years of employment if I did. So wish me luck. And then the letter goes on to describe how Wright acknowledges the fact that he owes Martin interest payment on a loan that he once offered him. I particularly like this letter because I think it points out the type of relationship that these two individuals had. Wright, in fact, is very excited to share the good news that he's off for Japan. And also it shows a little bit of the vulnerable side of Frank Lloyd Wright that we don't always get to see as to whether he will or won't get the commission. That said, it was through the financial backing of Martin throughout the years that Wright would be able to carry on his practice. The second letter is written just 5 months later. And again, Wright corresponds with his friend Darwin Martin, saying quite excitedly that he has just got into the office and the planning of the Imperial Hotel is up to me finally. You'll be glad to hear it, I know, and now can't we get together somehow and stop the inroads on the future of this deadly interest? So again, here, that more familiar self-assuredness of Wright comes out, and this kind of negotiation happening about when payment can happen for these particular loans. And finally, we have Darwin Martin's voice come through. He writes a letter back to his friend Frank Lloyd Wright just one day later after the previous letter we just read. I find that quite interesting myself because Martin is the consummate business person. He won't wait a minute to respond. He, of course, supports and is enthusiastic about Wright's ability to be able to become consulting architect for the Imperial Hotel. But again, he's quick to remind his friend, quoting him directly from his previous letter, that, quote, "You assured me that if I would make the loan, you would do the rest. And now I'm as keenly hard up as most folks." And very politely ending the letter, "Yours very truly, Darwin D. Martin." A lovely series of letters, of which there are many in the Wright-Martin correspondence at the University Archives. So now we'll make our way upstairs. And for those of you who have never experienced Barton House, this is a way for you to see a bedroom of the Barton House, which is now utilized as a gallery space for our exhibition. This particular gallery is devoted to the theme of the art of the gift. Within this space, we are highlighting a number of objects that come from Japan, the first of which is a pair of miniature vases on similar ivory pedestals. The vases could have been bud vases or simply curios that could be put on display. They depict scenes that maybe one would see on Japanese woodblock prints, where you see these delicate figures of women in procession. Some of them are carrying parasols, a rainfall of butterflies, blossoming pink cherry blossom trees, and the like. We know, in fact, that Frank Lloyd Wright brought these two miniature vases back to the Martin family because the Martins kept an inventory of all the objects in their personal possessions. And in one of those pages of the inventory, there's a listing that says specifically 2 miniature vases Frank Lloyd Wright brought back from Japan. I also point out some other objects that were gifted to the family, the Martins that is. On the north wall of this bedroom gallery space is a beautiful silk textile that has embroidered images of birds and flowers. And to me, they're reminiscent of a pair of prints that Frank Lloyd Wright brought back to the Martin family from the famous woodcut artist Ando Hiroshige of peonies and peacocks. On the other wall is another textile, and that particular framed textile has a beautiful embroidered depiction of these fantastical dragons and then these very abstract sort of curly Q clouds. Lastly, I just want to point out one of the more personal gifts that the Martin family received, which is a set which consists of a four-lobed bronze planter, which you see in the middle of the case, as well as 3 corresponding floral frogs. Now, floral frogs were mini vessels that had holes in them where one could put in stems of flowers so that you could display your particular arrangements in them without them falling down. These beautiful floral frogs are actually in the shape of either a single or a pair of koi goldfish, and my personal favorite, which is this very precious turtle. So imagine them with flowers in them, placed within the bronze planter with water in it, very reminiscent of a Japanese pond, or maybe would allow us to think back about maybe even the reflective pool at the Imperial Hotel. So this particular gallery is not only about Frank Lloyd Wright's interest in collecting artifacts from Japan, from his many trips to Japan, but also how he brought back artifacts for himself and many of his clients. We're more aware about his interest in collecting and gifting or selling wood block prints. But of course, in this space, we can witness how he brought back other decorative arts. This particular room also pays homage to descendants of the Martin family, the Foster and Mudra families in particular, because they cared for these personal possessions for many, many years with love and care, and gifted some of these items just recently, less than 2 years ago, giving us the opportunity for our visitors to see for the very first time some beautiful objects that they once owned. So I thought we would end our mini Wright virtual visit here. And I don't know, Anna, if there are any questions, but please know that I'm happy to answer them.
Thank you, Susanna. That was fascinating. And I definitely have some questions for you. First, could you explain a little bit the relationship that Edgar Taffel had to Buffalo in particular? Because I know that he was an apprentice of Wright's, and I understand, why he would be compelled to travel to Japan to collect these fragments. But how is it that this impressive collection ended up at the University of Buffalo? Do you know?
That's an excellent question. So it's a really interesting story because Edgar Taffel, as you know, was an apprentice of Wright and an architect. And at the time when the Imperial Hotel was being demolished, Taffel, in fact, was also working here on site at the Martin House. In 1967, the Martin House became the residence of the university presidents at the State University of New York at Buffalo. And Taffel was contracted to work at the Martin House to make some minor adjustments in the house that would make it more livable and workable for the needs of a president. So that association was made with the University at Buffalo. Taffel gifted the collection to the president, Martin Meyerson, who then transferred them over to the university archives where they could be best cared for.
Wow, how fortuitous for Martin House and for Buffalo. That's wonderful. Do you happen to know if there are collections like this that exist in Japan? Like, did anyone in the Japanese architectural community have an interest in preserving parts of the Imperial Hotel when it was demolished?
Yes, in fact, a small portion of the Imperial Hotel entry was saved, was deconstructed and reconstructed at an outdoor architectural museum outside of Tokyo known as the Meiji Mura. So one can experience one small piece of the Imperial Hotel if you are to visit Tokyo and that particular museum.
Right, that's a good point. And Do you know what replaced Wright's Imperial Hotel in that original location in Tokyo?
Yes, it's another Imperial hotel.
Okay.
Our guests might be interested to know that plans are currently underway to create the fourth generation of Imperial Hotel. They just selected an architect for that project not so long ago.
No, I didn't know that. Great. And Susanna, when was the last time these objects were on view?
So the last time that the Taffel Buffalo collection were on view was in 1983. And I don't even believe that the full grouping was all out on display. So this is actually a very special moment that we celebrate here in Buffalo, both at the university and here at Martin House, and something that we can share with all our visitors when they come to visit us.
Yes, that's really very exciting. And I love that UB and you and Martin House had the foresight to install the collection for this important anniversary. How long is the exhibition up, and how does one actually visit it in person?
Oh, wonderful. Well, the exhibition is up until May 12th. If anyone comes to Martin House, they can, if they're on a tour, it's a complimentary access to the exhibition. Or if you want to just see the exhibition, it's a very low fee exhibition ticket, which also grants you a discount on the tour. So it's a win-win situation. We also have some free Fridays events on the fourth Fridays of each month through the run of the exhibition. We also like to say that, if you were to contact the university archives, they might be willing to, after the exhibition, provide some access if that's at all possible.
Well, our program here, exists as an educational tool, and as well as to build awareness around Wright's contributions to the history of architecture and design. And our hope is that many of you out there watching will venture out and actually visit and support publicly accessible sites like Martin House and this special exhibition. So thank you, Susanna. This was a real treat to get your take on this important exhibition, and we really appreciate you hosting us today. And thanks again to Kelly behind the camera. I will say goodbye to you now and bring my friend and colleague Eric back on screen so we can talk about the 2024 season. Thanks, Susanna.
Hey, Anna, how are you?
All right. Well, that was fascinating and a great kickoff to 2024. I know you all watching haven't seen us in a while, and I hope you weren't worried about us, but we have been busy planning our 2024 season. And as this is now the fourth iteration of this project, we wanted it to be thoughtful, and we decided to scale back on the episodes a bit, and be sure to bring you to Wright sites that we have not yet featured in the 4 years of our program, which brings us to the big reveal. Dun, 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 dun. Scott, if you could bring up our schedule graphic, please. And Eric, if you want to run through the list. Let's see.
Uh-oh. Did we lose our producer? There we go.
There it is.
All right. Uh-oh.
The big reveal.
Yeah, so we're really excited to be traveling to, I'll move this way, there we go, to a handful of sites this year. As Anna mentioned, we're not going to do quite as many episodes because we want to make sure that we have a little more time to prepare, and we wanted to make this into something that is sustainable for us to keep doing in the long term. But for this year, we really wanted to focus on sites that we had not featured before in the program at all. And so we're really excited to announce where we'll be going next. Beginning May 23rd, for Wright Virtual Visits will go to the SC Johnson headquarters in Racine, Wisconsin. And Anna and I were lucky enough to tour there in person last week, actually, with a number of our colleagues. And we're excited to bring Wright Virtual Visits there in May. Then, in keeping with our tradition, on July 11th, we'll have a special episode that focuses on the 5th anniversary of the inscription of the 20th century architecture of Frank Lloyd Wright on the UNESCO World Heritage List. So excited to bring a new take on that to all of you. Then on September 12th, we're going to Virginia to the Pope Leahy House, which is owned and operated by the National Trust for Historic Preservation, and we'll tour that home. And then finally, on November 7th, we'll go to the Historic Park Inn Hotel in Mason City, Iowa, which is the only Frank Lloyd Wright designed hotel that you can just go book a room in any night and stay whenever you want to visit Mason City, which is something, if you love the architecture of Frank Lloyd Wright, that you should definitely consider doing. So we're excited to visit all of these places and to have all of you along with us.
Scott, you can take that down now. Thank you. And just a reminder that recordings of this episode and all past episodes are ready to view at savewright.org/WVV. And so before I let you go, while I have you here, just need to put on these because this is what we have been preparing for here in Western New York, as we are directly in the path of totality. And we have an upcoming free virtual event that I know you'll be interested in. It's this coming Tuesday, April 2nd at 7 p.m. Eastern. It's a Wright Pechakucha, or some people pronounce it Pachachka event. We've organized this to coincide with this total solar eclipse, and it's focusing on Wright sites that are all in the path of totality. So Martin House and Grey Cliff are two of those sites. Pechakucha is this fun and dynamic presentation style where each presenter has 20 slides and 20 seconds for each slide, which results in a 6 something minute presentation. I myself will be presenting, and the event is spearheaded by the Westcott House. So it's going to be a great time this coming Tuesday. So I highly encourage you to tune in for the live stream or watch the recording, which will be viewable sometime the next day. All the information is at pechakucha.com. We also have a link in the events on our Wright Virtual Visits Facebook page, and that's also where you will find all the upcoming Wright Virtual Visits for the 2024 season. So I think that's it for today. Am I forgetting anything, Eric?
I don't think so. Yeah, we're really excited to be back at this for, as hard as it is to believe, the 5th year. So it's really a pleasure to be working with you and with Forever Ready and all of the sites that we're going to feature. And we can't wait to keep this going.
I'm sorry. I thought it was the 4th year. It's the 5th year.
It is.
Yikes, time flies. All right.
It does.
5 seasons of what is a great program. And thank you for everyone who tuned in today. And we look forward to seeing you next time.
Yeah, May 23rd.